Let me just say quickly, I'm grateful to the leaders of this Congress and to all of the friends who have been so exceedingly kind to me through the years. And my friend Thomas from Dallas, Texas, a good friend of mine, I don't know if he's out there or not, but I make a statement every year, and I think the statement we all must realize that before another year, some of us will not be here. I may not be here. And what I say in this final message may be a farewell message for me, and may be a farewell message to a lot of you. But let me extend my gratitude to all of you preachers and leaders and workers, and for being so very grateful, so good to me across the years. And I'm eternally grateful. I want to move fast because there are other seminars that must come on. Now, I know that the time that we've been working on is prime time, and but there are a whole lot of other people involved to run this. You can't run this. One person can't run this. It takes a whole lot of people to run this show. And so the deans, the director general, and all of these people, they have to make up this show. And if they ain't here, there ain't gonna be no show. So I appreciate their presence, and I appreciate the fact that they have made statements. The dean and the treasurer of the National Baptist Convention, a very good friend of mine. We must get along with him. But I'm happy to do it. Now today, what I want to talk about, it's a title that was lifted from the entertainment community. And I was fascinated by this title of a song which was written by two young black people. It's a husband and wife. Some of you may know them. I saw them last night. Marilyn McCoo and Billy Davis Jr. And they were formerly with the famous Fifth Dimension. And they later formed the Duet, which is very successful and very popular. And they wrote a song, some of you might have heard, that you do not have to be a star to be in my show. And it struck me so much, and I spoke to my wife about it, and I looked at it, and I said, I like that. You do not have to be a star to be in my show. And I went down to Howard University to preach, and I used that theme. And then something said, maybe I'm going to try it again. And I tried it at Cornerstone Church. And now this is the third time I've tried it. Now titles and themes among black people emerged out of life situations. And we have a whole lot of titles and themes that we have had. And black blues and black spirituals grew out of the same mood. And when we study the black blues and black spirituals, they all came out of the same mood: disappointment, anger, happiness, sadness, disenchantment, frustration, loneliness, and the rest of it. They all came out of a plaintive and melancholy with tune and tone. All of them came out of the same background. The only difference was that the blues in the field and in the factory and the spirituals in the church were closely related. Now the blues were not distributed as widely as the spirituals, because spirituals sort of became institutionalized in camp meetings and in churches. Itinerant preachers helped to pick up these ditties and blue and spirituals and took them from plantation to plantation and sort of institutionalized the spiritual. We didn't get all of them, we just picked up a few. But so many of those spirituals we never did get. They were hung up in some small community, they never did get circulated, but there were a whole lot of black spirituals we never did get and never will get. But the the blues did not sustain the national popularity that the spirituals received, because they didn't have anybody to publicize them. They didn't have the public relations that the spirituals had. As I said, the preachers would go from one plantation to another, church to another, and nobody's ever heard those ditties, but he started singing and swinging, in a little while, everybody in the church had it. And they would have those blues, those spirituals would just be sung all over because the preacher was able, because most preachers in that generation could sing. And they would start these ditties. But the blues did not sustain that type of popularity. And I think there are probably just two of the blues that got sustained national publicity, as I recall, and some of you might know them better than I did, but I've been with them for a long time. But I remember two blues that have stayed with us and have had sustained interest across the years. One was Stormy Weather. It has national popularity and publicity, and some of you maybe don't recall some of the words. I don't know why there are no stars in the sky. Stormy weather. But there's something about that was very fascinating. And then the St. Louis blues. Some of you can remember that the St. Louis blues. Oh yes, somebody said. But it also shows the social and economic instability of the black person. It's expressed in the St. Louis blues. He was unstable economically and socially, and one of the expressions that he makes in the St. Louis blues, if I feel tomorrow like I feel today, I'll pack my trunk and make my getaway. So his patience was very limited, and his mobility was extremely simple, because he didn't have anything but a trunk. And when he got unhappy, it didn't take him long to shift from one plantation or one community to another, because if I feel tomorrow like I feel today, I don't have anything to do, I ain't gonna lose nothing, I ain't got no property, I ain't got no house, I'll just pack my trunk and make my getaway. But the spiritual came out of the same mood and the same disappointment, frustration, disenchantment. But the spiritual was boasted by hope. And now hope did something for the black that couldn't be done by the blues. I'm still frustrated, I'm still disappointed, I still have my disenchantments, but I'm not a trunk packing person. But when I'm frustrated and when I'm blue, I got another song, I'm so glad that trouble don't last always. And by the way, the migration of the blacks from the south to the north and east and west had something to do about this attitude of blacks. The trunk packing blacks moved faster than the most stable blacks. For a half century, blacks were moving from south to north, east, and west, but most of them who went north and south and west were the trunk packing type. And the more substantial blacks had their homes, they were school teachers and they were doing something else. They couldn't move as fast. And that's why in the last 50 years, black people in the east and in the west and in the north, we find it easier to preach to that element than it was to preach to the Southern blacks who were school teachers and who were businessmen, who were church people. But the masses of the blacks, the Trump packing blacks, but they joined these big churches. And in our churches, we've got a lot of the Trump packing blacks. But they run the churches. And it's much easier to preach in Detroit and in New York and in Pittsburgh and in Los Angeles than it was to preach in Houston and in Dallas and some of the small towns in Texas or any other southern city, because more of your substantial blacks who didn't pack their trunks and make their getaway didn't go anywhere. And so somebody might write about this. I wish some of these young fellows might write about the difference between, we all had the same mood. We all were blue. We all had the blues, but we behaved differently. Because from the spiritual, we had a different type of behavior. I'm just as blue as a man was who wanted to pack his trunk, but I ain't going nowhere. I'm going to stay where I am. So this title struck me very, very greatly.
Say it, Doctor. Say it.
It struck me a great deal, and it struck me as a text, and several, but one particular that comes from a Galilean preacher. A Galilean preacher who was rejected by the recognized church leaders of his time. He didn't have any official credentials. And he stated when he went to his temple one day, went to his city one day, and they called on him to come up and preach. And Miles Fisher used to say that when they asked Jesus to come up and read the scripture in Nazareth that day, Jesus had been off preaching, and somebody saw him in the audience and said to the leader, said, look, that's Jesus of Nazareth. He's a preacher now. He said, why don't you ask him to come up and read this and that? And Miles Fisher said that they thought Jesus couldn't read because they hadn't seen the record of his having been to in the school. But he said that Jesus came up and just opened the book. And without anything else, he said, the Spirit of the Lord is upon me. Because the Lord has anointed me to preach the gospel. Now he was not an authorized preacher. Jesus didn't have any license. He didn't really have any recognized credentials. But the only credentials he said was that the Spirit of the Lord was upon him. And the Lord has appointed me to preach the gospel. Now in one of these stories, he sounds this note very clearly, that you don't have to be a star to be in my show. It's in the 14th chapter of St. Luke. A certain man, he didn't identify the man, but this man prepared an elaborate supper, and dinners and feasts and festivals were very popular among the Jews, as you know. And this was evidently a very, very wealthy person. He may have had some feeling of guilt for having exploited a whole lot of people. I don't know why he was given this dinner. Maybe he's like a whole lot of other people who exploit people all year and then give them some kind of feast at the end of the year because they feel some sense of guilt. I was born in that kind of situation. On the 19th of June, white folks here in Texas used to give Negroes cows and hogs and give them that day off, give them beer and everything they wanted for that one day. But they're taking all that cotton and corn and everything else on them. I don't know why this man wouldn't give this dinner. He might have had a sense of guilt. And then he may have had an ego problem. His ego may have been tarnished, and he needed something to brush up his dusty ego. And then he may have been living in lonely luxury and needed people to lift his spirit. Sometimes he had everything he wanted but people. But whatever it was, he gave this supper. Might have been political, it might have been social, but whatever the motive was, he gave this supper. And he carefully selected his guests. And the list must have been star-studded because the excuses indicated the stature of some of the invited guests. The record says that one man said he'd bought 5 yokes of oxen. Now, he wasn't any poor man. Another man said that he had bought some real estate and he had to have it checked out. And then another man said he had just got married and he had a whole lot of problems. I don't know what his problem was. But the record said the supper was prepared. The host was well dressed. Waiters and were beautifully attired. But the rumor accumulated and was circulated that none of the invited guests would be coming. The host was upset and humiliated. He tore his hair with fury and chagrin. His embarrassment took a peculiar twist. There was, the food was ready, the dinner was prepared, his waiters were there. I guess the food must have been hot because he said it's ready. But nobody is coming. And he decided that I've got to people my party from the community of non-special people. There are people out there, and if those people who don't want to come, I've got to re-people my party. And so he said, servant, look, forget about the guest list. I need people. Go quickly into the streets and alleys and cities and invite beggars and cripples and lame and blind. Expand the invitation to the highways and hedges. I must have people for wherever I may get them without any special list. Bring them. The Lord Jesus came into the world with a special invitation to saving people. They said no thanks. Wow. And they went on their way with their laws and traditions and customs and behavior. And Jesus was disappointed, but he didn't panic. He expanded his invitation to the highways and hedges and alleys and drives and dens, and he listed a whosoever will invitation to every nation, to every kindred. And the kingdom of heaven depends upon people from the highways and hedges. And there is no special invitation, and there are no special guest list for the kingdom of heaven. The Christian gospel is for whosoever will, let him come.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Our culture, as you know, is operated by people from the highways and hedges. Our governments, our industries, and all of our concerns are not run by stars. And but our economy is run by people. Now, stars cannot tie up the economy, but truck drivers, sanitation men, coal men, steel workers, hard hat laborers, farmers, people from the highways and hedges can tie up society. Now, all economists can take jobs around the world, and it doesn't bother us. Senators can go and come whenever they get ready. They wouldn't bother us. They couldn't tie up the economy. A whole lot of stars couldn't bother the economy, but when these common people stop, it will tie up the economy. Now, every once in a while, a star flashes on the horizon with brilliancy, but it doesn't last long. Like a transient meteor, They're like a fairy streak in the sky, but they fall in oblivion quickly. But the unidentified stable stars continue to bedeck the heavens. I talked to you before about tugboats, and you know the story of the tugboat. You can't, a lot of people don't know the name of tugboats. And, but the luxury liners that go back and forward across the ocean, we know those people. We know the names of those luxury liners. Yeah. But those luxury liners can't get in nor out without a tugboat. And this society is like a tugboat. These unknown, unidentified tugboats run this society. And this world can't move without the tugboat, without the average person. And the average person, I don't care how you may be upset and bewildered by a star, but remember, stars don't run this culture. It's got to be run by the average person from the highway and heading. When the Lord began his ministry, when Jesus began his ministry, he didn't go out star seeking. He didn't have any questionnaire demanding resumes and titles and ranks. When he started his ministry, he went out and saw some ordinary fishermen and hailed them, "Follow me." Now this is rather odd for one who is out to build a great empire to go out looking for picking up fishermen and farmers and people like unknown people. But Jesus didn't go out looking for some priests and some potentates and the rest of them. He said, you don't have to have any special credentials. You don't have to have any special briefing. Come on and follow me. You don't have to be a Levite. You don't have to be a king. You don't have to be a prince. You don't have to be a potentate. You don't have to be a scholar. It's good if you want to be, but you don't have to be. Drop your nets and follow me. And my empire will be built by people like you. You will find that you can find security and happiness and joy and glory as a member of the supporting cast. You don't have to be a star. Simon Peter raised a question once. You remember when Jesus said something about a man who wanted to follow him, and finally this man went away with a lot of money, and Jesus said it's going to be hard for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven. And Simon Peter seized upon this statement quickly and expressed something that the disciples all had been thinking about. So now Jesus, I wouldn't want to say anything about this, but since you're talking about money, you know, you told us you didn't have any. You told us fox have holes and birds have nests. And on one occasion, we saw you fumble a situation where a man had plenty of money. And you turned him away and told him to go and get rid of what he had and come back and follow me. We found out about your indifference to money. And we've left everything to follow you. What are we going to get out of this venture? And I said, well, I think Simon said, I wasn't going to bring it up, but since we're talking about money, what are we going to get out of this venture? What are we going to get out of leaving our homes and our families and following a preacher like you, a poor preacher, an unpopular preacher, a preacher that doesn't get recognition with organized religion and with the organized church? What are we going to get from you? But let me tell you, brothers and sisters, that the highways and hedges pilgrims may be more happy in their travel along this journey than a star. And there are thousands of preachers, some of whom listen to me right now, around this nation who are not stars, but they're well-adjusted members of the supporting cast. And they're not nervous, they're not upset, they're really secure. And there are a whole lot of preachers sitting out there now that are very happy, and they're not stars, but they're very secure because they are regular, active members of the supporting cast. And you don't have to be a star in the show, but if you're a good supporter in the supporting cast, you'll be happy. I went to California several years ago, a long time ago, and I was anxious to see some of the houses of the South. And a friend of mine was supposed to know, and I guess he did, he showed me all through, and he said, Jack Bentley lives here, and Bob Hope lives here, and somebody lives out there and all that. But all along, there were other beautiful houses with beautiful lawns and swimming pools and the rest of it. And I said, what about all of these other houses? They're just as beautiful as the rest of them, but only the people he knew were the stars. But there are a whole lot of beautiful houses out there, but they were not designated as homes where stars live. And there are a whole lot of us in this world. We're not stars, but we are comfortable. We're getting on all right. We have a feeling of security. And Jesus said, come on and follow me. You may not be a star, but you'll be on the supporting cast. And if you stay with the supporting cast, you'll get paid. You'll get your check regularly on the supporting cast. And the hope of our world today is that we get strength and power and faith and security from being on the supporting cast. Let me tell you this story. I'm going to have to hurry. There's a lady, I've told this story before. There was a lady in our church named Mrs. Milton. She's passed and going to heaven. And one day I was down to Washington. That time I was in what they call a social committee, something of that committee. And I was called along with a lot of other people to come down and sit because there was something they wanted to talk to leaders about. And there must have been about 150 of us from around the country, black and white and the rest of it. And they were discussing something they thought was very, very important. They wouldn't let any reporters or nobody come in other than just to tell us some of the dangers that are facing our nation. And I was so upset when I heard about it. And I went back home and happened to be on a prayer meeting night. And when I got there, they were singing and praying and testifying. And I looked at those people and I said to the members of my congregation as I heard them singing and praying and testifying, I said, these poor people don't know what's happening in the world. I've just come from Washington where I've heard this distressing news about the imminent dangers of our nation, and these poor people don't know anything about what's happening. I said, they're pitiful. Sorry, but I can't tell them. And then the lady, Mrs. Middleton, got up and started from way back where she was sitting and came down the aisle singing. And she was singing, I ain't uneasy, my Lord. I ain't uneasy, my Lord, cause I got my ticket bound for glory. And I ain't uneasy, my Lord. And I sat there and listened to Miss Middleton, and then I was thinking about what I heard down the Washington. And I said to myself, Miss Middleton has some information that they don't have in Washington. Miss Middleton has some connection. She never been to Washington. She never went to Washington during her lifetime. And she didn't have any kind of training, and she didn't know what they were talking about down in Washington, and didn't care. She says, because I got my ticket bound for glory, and I ain't uneasy, my Lord. Let me just quickly say another thing. There are restless people around this world today, disenfranchised people, disinherited people, pressing for entrance into the feasts and festivals of a dominant leadership around the world. In Africa, the strong arm of arrogant and minority people are attempting to hold a line against determined majority black people. And they're making efforts to delay the inevitable independence and freedom of black people, but they might as well move over because black people are on their way in Africa. The hour has arrived for dignity and freedom, and the saddened people must expand their invitation to open the doors for people on the highways and hedges. I'm going to skip now to a statement. Among the things that John claimed that he saw on the Isle of Patmos, one of the things he said he saw was a great multitude that no man could number. And he said that one of the angels asked him, "Who are these people?" And John said, "I'm sorry, I don't know these people." He said, "Now I know the star-studded tribes of Israel. I know them. They are the identified, certified, verified groups. I know them. They belong to the right families. They were born on the right side of the track. They are God's chosen people. They have patriotic roots and they have tribal ancestry. I know them. They are star-studded. Everybody knows them. They're known around the world because they belong to the star." But the elder said, "You ought to know these other people. They are non-stars. They were not born to be, but they won their right to be. These are they that came up through great tribulation. And their tribulations left their robes soiled and stained with blood and tears. But they have washed their robes. Oh, hallelujah. They have washed their robes and they made them white in the blood of the Lamb. Therefore they are before the throne of God and serve him day and night in his temple. They shall hunger no more, neither thirst any more, neither shall the sun light on them, nor any heat. For the Lamb which is in the midst of the throne shall feed them and shall lead them into living fountains of water, and God shall wipe away all tears from their eyes. These are they that came up. These are they that came to tribulation and trial. My brother Bill, who just left this platform, reminded me of something that happened to us that I've forgotten. Bill said that when we used to go to town, Marlin, from the country, and they'd have circuses to come to town, and they'd have a hobby horse. Some of you never heard of that. They'd have a hobby horse, and they would ride that hobby horse. And Bill said that my mother had us all there huddled up to ride the hobby horse. And he said that my mama started to tour the hobby horse with us behind her, and a white gentleman said, "Wait, Annie." Said, "Your children can't get on yet." Said, "Wait till them white children get off." And after a while, he sort of settled down, and then he beckoned his hand and said, "You can come on now, Annie. You can put your children on." That was many years ago. But I thank God now as I live in that fabulous hotel where I'm living over there. That God said to me and my mother and father, the rest of them are gone, but God is saying to me now, y'all can come on now. If you got faith, if you got integrity, if you got industry, you can come on now. And thanks be to God, as we come from all around this country, we've had to stand back a long time. But God is fixing it so that God is saying to all of his children, you can come on now. Then, brothers and sisters, when the show is over, the entire cast comes out to take a final bow. You've seen these shows, haven't you? And when the show is over, the whole cast comes out to take a bow. The show is over. And then the star comes out and makes the final bow. When this redemptive production is over, and it's going to be over one of these days. When this big show ends, it's going to end one of these days. And John says that the members of the cast will be gathered from all around the world, from every kindred and tribe and every tongue, to pay tribute to the star of the show. Jesus is the star. And all of us that belong to the supporting cast will come out from wherever we are and take a bow. I don't care how small your church was, you can take a bow. I don't care what part of the country you live in, take your bow. I don't care where you've been to school or not been to school, take